half-ton dogman chased me through the woods. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I had a dogman experience that seems to be different from most of the others out there on the internet. You sort of get a little closer than some of the channels to my experience because of the size and muscularity of some of the animals in your stories. Still, what happened to me isn't really like any of your other episodes either. This happened when I lived with my mom back in the late 1980s or early 90s. No, I didn't have a cell phone, and no, I didn't get a picture, so don't even be a jerk about it. I nearly lost my life, and the personal trauma I've had to try to get over in the decades since is all the proof I think I should have to present. So I had dropped out of college in my senior year, and just sort of started watching more TV. My mother and I began arguing about how I should get a job or a husband and move out. I knew she was right, and so I set up some job interviews in Detroit, which was the closest big city. I had to take a local bus to the big bus station and then take a second one into the city, and I was nervous and unprepared. I do need to make note that my mother sharply criticized all my shoe choices, as they were scuffed or not dressy enough. She even tried to ram my Sasquatch feet into her tiny shoes, but that was not happening. I finally ended up wearing these high-heel boots that I'd only worn out dancing before. They were black and didn't really draw too much attention to themselves, and they were the closest thing to what we were looking for. I only mention this because those boots were hard to run in, and I had no idea I was going to be doing some serious running that morning. Now, it takes a long time to get into the city from where my mom still lives. I don't want to say where that is, but it's to the north and a little west of Detroit. It's pretty suburban, but the bus stop I had to get to first was along a little highway on the side of a patch of woods. It was very early in the morning, and it was a stormy morning too, so I may as well have been walking at night, and I was creeped out. It's not too bad an area up there, but I was alone and dressed up, which was out of the ordinary for me in those days, as it is again these days. So I felt self-conscious and uncomfortable before I ever even saw a single other person on that morning. Plus, I really was uptight and hoping I could get a job, any job, on that day. Besides calming my mother down, I needed the spending money. So my mind was on all of these different things when I started to realize that the sidewalk ahead of me, which had the lonely empty road to my left and the densely packed but leafless wood to my right, was blocked by some really big, something. At first I thought I was looking at a big mound of dirt on the sidewalk up ahead in the darkness. I watched it as I kept clopping toward it. As I watched, I saw the dirt pile move, and I jumped in the air. I don't remember if I screamed, but I was known in those days for this high-pitched squeal when I got scared. That was why all my friends always liked to scare me so much. Only that pile of dirt was not likely to be one of my friends at 6 o'clock or whatever time it was in that dark morning. Then, a flash of lightning lit the scene for 1 second, making me jump and possibly squeal in fear again. While the scene was brighter than day in that one brief moment, it looked to me like the mound of dirt was covered in hair or fur. I thought maybe a very big man had a dirty old rug or an animal pelt thrown over himself to stay warm. I was imagining that it must be a homeless man, and that was a problem, because I was going to have to walk out into the street to get around him and to my bus stop. Then, in a second or two, the thunder finally arrived, and it sounded like a big storm was in the offing. My boots were so loud, and I wanted to avoid the huge, scary homeless guy noticing me, if at all possible. I was afraid to walk around him in the street, as I would make a racket in those two torture devices, and then he might try to talk to me, or worse. So that was when I made one of those kinds of decisions I made a lot, back during that period of my life. Not really understanding what the rules of the world were, I often tried things that everyone else knew would be stupid to try. In this case, I decided to try to walk onto the grass by the woods and cut around the big scary man to his right on the dirt and through the bushes and trees. I was still at the age where I wanted to find out for myself why a decision might be stupid. And find out is what I did. So, walking in the damp earth off the road was considerably quieter, but the ground was a bit softer than I had expected, and the going was a bit slow. I was also getting the bottoms of my boots covered in messiness, which I would not yet quite call mud. Once that rain started, though, it was going to be the muddiest of muds. I couldn't change my mind, though. I was coming up alongside the large dark mound and was about to pass him. A terrible odor hit my nose, and I felt ill. It wasn't that alcohol kind of smell that I've caught off other homeless dudes, though. This guy just smelled like he recently passed away, and then got torn open for an autopsy. And as I was directly to the right of this smelly dark mound, another flash of lightning lit up the scene for maybe 1 second. In that second, I happened to be facing toward the strange figure who was hunched over something on the floor in front of him. And then when that blue lightning lit things up brighter than a flood-lit situation comedy from the 70s, I saw very clearly what I was in the dirt walking around. It was a brief view, but a clear and detailed one, in which there could be no question of what that was over there and what the smells were coming from. I'm going to try to tell you the PG-rated version for YouTube, so the adults in the audience are going to have to fill in the blanks themselves to completely grasp what I'm saying here. There was a man already taller than myself while squatting down, and in that second of light, he turned to look at me. His eyes were not human eyes, and they glowed bright white at me. His face was not human. It was canine, and its long snout parted in a vicious-looking sneer as it caught sight of me. It might be hard for this to register on people, so I always repeat this point when telling my story. It was taller than I was, and I was seeing it while it was squatting down over something, and that something was emitting steam into the cold morning air. This is the part that's hard to describe for your channel, so feel free to rewrite any of it that you need to, but here goes. Well, let me put it this way. I'm not going to say it was a big male deer with a large rack of antlers lying on the walkway in front of the hairy beastman, but I will say that's what it once was. Not after it met this moving mound of dirt and hair, though. Since then, he was nothing but a hot steaming breakfast for what exactly? What is large, hairy, or furry, has glowing eyes at night, and is carnivorous. A bear, right? That's what I thought too. Some kind of very long-snouted bear, and it was eating something larger than I was. And now it saw me. I backed away from the silhouette as it rose up to stand on its hind legs. When it was fully up, I was stunned at how long its legs were. The longest bear legs of all time, and shaped more like wolf legs than they should have been, too. The overall shape was just not what I had been expecting. I had to battle against a rising feeling of nausea, which is a problem of mine when I get nervous or scared. And then the lightning flashed again, and I saw that this bear was now standing up and facing me as I backed off into the woods. It was literally twice as tall as I was, or taller. It had to have been 12 feet, probably more, when it stood up on its hind legs. But the creature's face and legs and tail looked far more like a huge wolf than a bear. The rest of it looked like a mix of a bear, a wolf, and I guess you would say a man, but a giant man. It was muscular, like a lot of the dogmen on your channel, but it was a lot more heavy set than most monsters from Dogman stories I've heard or read. I don't mean heavy like a bear. I mean it was a huge upright dog who had never stopped eating. It was a muscle man, yes, but this muscle man was unconcerned about his body fat percentage. I'm not going to call him a fat dogman, but he was huge in every way. I don't think he had to compete very hard for food, and so he had just become giant in a sort of a Hogzilla fashion. Well, not that bad, obviously. I mean, he was still fast enough to take down an adult buck deer. I was thinking that he would drop down to all fours before moving in my direction. I was also thinking that if I continued to back off slowly, I could enter the first row of trees, then go back to trying to cut around him. So I kept part of my attention peripherally at the beast standing there, and the other part on what I was stepping onto in those boots. Suddenly the giant man dog started growling, and I froze myself completely. He started growling even louder at that, so I started walking backward again, and the creature man leaped off the path and began lumbering in my direction, still up on his two hind legs. I screamed and turned to run into the dark woods. Each time the big dogman landed on one of his two long legs, there was a low-level boom, and the earth kind of bounced around for a second underneath me. Something about that was so intimidating that each time I felt the ground rumble, I sort of emotionally rumbled inside as well. My knees felt weak, as much from the vibration as from the fear induced by the knowledge that the dogman running up behind me was far too big for its own good. This must have been the only dogman in that entire region, because he seemed to be eating every single living thing within his range. I remember turning at one point and seeing long hair flowing behind the shoulders of this huge monster man. It looked like he was a heavy metal fan, and that made me laugh inside. It's a stupid kind of internal joke that you have with yourself when you're really scared. Like when I was a kid, I was rescued from a fire by a fireman. I asked him his name, and he said Meyer. I was giggling as he carried me out of the building. When the medics outside asked me why I was laughing, I told them Meyer rhymed with fire. They figured I was in shock. Actually, that is my weird way of avoiding going into shock. So now that I was once again afraid for my life, I had really dumb jokes going through my head about how I was being chased by the long-haired couch potato dogman, and how he was going to eat me to satisfy his munchies, that he probably listens to the Grateful Dead and, other unfunny stuff like that. I guess it's my defense mechanism. But it's better than the one where I just feel ill and nauseous that I told you about earlier. This dogman was big in multiple ways, and the way he shook the ground will never leave my sense memory. Sometimes a big truck drives past my house, and I think that dogman has come back. It's a scary thing, and it sticks with you. So I nearly fell out of the woods onto this pathway that had much harder packed dirt. It was easier to run there, so that was what I did. I saw a guy off in the distance and I called to him. It was hard to scream and breathe both, as I was panting and out of breath. I managed to catch his attention, and he turned to face me. I started babbling about a giant dog bear, and this guy, who was not small himself, looked down at me like I had 3 heads. I tried to sound more sane so that this guy wouldn't think I was a lunatic, but my story was pretty out there. I kept apologizing and starting over, and the guy's eyes just looked like they believed me, less and less. Then from behind me, I heard a cracking of timber, and the vibrating, thudding footsteps of the immense dogman were approaching. Sure enough, he burst out of the forest and onto the pathway, and I collapsed to my knees in exhaustion. I couldn't run anymore. My legs were shot, and I needed to rest. I would have asked the man for help, but I was out of energy, and all I could do was watch. So I may as well tell you now, I found out later that the guy I was so afraid might think I was crazy was in fact some kind of a nut job who cooked up weird potions for himself at this shack just behind where we ran into each other. God only knows what he was seeing when he was looking at my face, Anyway, I only found out that stuff later. In that moment, I was beginning to suspect it, though, because the guy was shouting passages from the Bible at the dogman. At least that's what it sounded like to me. Some kind of Old Testament banishing spell, or something of that nature. He was pointing at that big, heavy, long-haired dogman, and he was telling him to go away. The dogman was looking him over and salivating. This guy would have made a much better meal than I would make, and he would still be a lot easier to take down than that buck back on the road must have been. But the dogman did not lunge at the meth head, no. The crazy man, screaming like an absolute, lunatic, charged into battle, running at the dogman and flying through the air at him, attempting a tackle around his middle. Now, this out-of-his-head dude was as big as a professional football player. I mean, he was 6.5 feet tall. And he was solid, too, right? But when he hit that dogman with his full force around his chest and belly, that dogman only took one step back and maintained his balance. The human dude practically bounced off him. It was that ineffectual, a tackle attempt. I thought I was going to witness a swift takedown of the man by the dogman giant, and for some reason I just stood there, continuing to watch. That crazy guy, who was probably drugged up in who knows how many ways, displayed remarkable stamina. No matter how many times the dogman knocked him down, that psycho got up, dusted himself off, then raced back into battle against his much larger, much better suited opponent. I actually started to root for the insane guy. Then I caught sight of my watch and realized I had time to get back to catch my bus, while these two guys were doing their thing. I did not get a job that day, but after that I wasn't nervous about those interviews. At least I knew the guy interviewing me wasn't going to chase me through the woods while growling, so how bad could it be? I told the story around to some friends, and I learned about that crazy hermit in the woods by his reputation. I asked everyone to keep an eye out for him because I wanted to know if he survived, or if the dogman did him in, on that dark and stormy morning. Well, one of my friends told me they saw him talking to himself a while later. He was walking with a limp, but he was alive. I wonder if he beat the dogman somehow, or if the battle ended in a draw, or maybe the dogman got distracted from eating the hermit, in the same way he got distracted from eating me, by seeing another potential victim that looked like they might be tastier. So my advice to any of you suburban Michiganders, especially if you live by any slightly wooded areas, when you have a job interview in town, is this. Get your mom to drive you to the bus stop. Also, don't wear high-heeled dance club shoes when you're on the turf of the Michigan Dogman. Hank picked this EP whose name Lisa. I asked him to, and I said pleasa. Hank said, why not Lisa Brickner? I said, yeah, okay, I'm picking her. Please join us in thanking our newest executive producer, Lisa Brickner, for becoming just one of a whole new batch of channel members. Lisa gets to check out the 3 recent secret uncensored Dogman stories that only members can watch, such as I Saw a Dogman, Eat a Drunk. To find out how you too can become a Scary Stories channel member, help us to stay online, just check out this important message from our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman. Thank. Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that when it cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.